We're back out here once again, and today we're talking about these guys, jerkbaits. Certainly one of the all-time most popular bass fishing lures for winter, and how these things may actually be holding you back. How is that possible? Well, stick around. We're going to talk all about it. There we go. I got him. That's not a bad one. Wow, that's a good fish right there. Yep, they're out in the middle. Come here, dude. Ooh, yeah, come here, you. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And even though the calendar may not reflect it, you can ask any bass angler and they will tell you winter has arrived. That icy air has locked in for much of the country. Here in South Mississippi, we are expecting temperatures down in the low 30s for about the next week or so. That's highly unusual, especially for this time of year. But it is what it is. And how does that affect our bass fishing? Well, it can make some serious changes when out on the water. First and foremost, most anglers are going to be bringing out these guys, right? The jerkbait. When winter comes around, everybody says, throw a jerkbait. That's going to be the number one thing. And there are a million wintertime jerkbait videos out there. I know, I've made a bunch of them. Now, I'm not saying these things are bad in wintertime. They're very effective, especially when fished the right way in the right areas. But a lot of times it can be overkill, especially when you have a jerkbait tied on, you head out to the water, it doesn't work, and you have no plan B. What do you do then? Well, you start junk fishing and hoping you find something that works. And if you find a pattern, well, then you count yourself very, very lucky. But the thing about it is we should not be so heavily reliant on just jerkbaits. Sure, they're great presentations and they will catch a lot of fish during the winter. But if all you are doing is relying on a jerkbait, if that is what you are doing whenever you head out to the water, first and foremost, every single time is have a jerkbait tied on, well, you're doing yourself a great disservice, especially since there are other techniques, presentations, and lures that can catch just as many fish. You have to pay attention to the conditions. It's what we say all the time, right? You have to pay attention to the mood those bass are in. And especially whenever you're fishing a jerkbait and everybody around you is fishing a jerkbait, and let's face it, even in the wintertime, our waters can be very pressured anymore. Well, it's going to turn those bass off when they see jerkbait after jerkbait after jerkbait. And you can try different colors, different types, different sizes, different brands. But in the long run, it really doesn't get anything. You guys know I love a jerkbait. You know I love this white Yozuri. I've caught so many fish on this. You guys know I use that Chrome KVD 200. That's another one that I use a lot. My Lucky jerkbait. And the list goes on and on. I fished a lot of jerkbaits on this channel, and I do it all year long. But in the wintertime, I have to force myself to be mindful. I have to think about what are the conditions, what's going on, and where are those bass setting up, and how are they located. Last time I went out on the water, it was conditions much like this, only it was much windier. It was a dreary, cold day. Temperatures were down in the low 50s. And first thing you're going to think of is a jerkbait. However, where I was fishing, a jerkbait wasn't going to work. I was fishing in maybe 2.5 feet of water, and it was choked with hydrilla. That's not where you're going to fish a jerkbait. Well, not and have any success with it, unless you want to catch hydrilla in huge clumps on every single cast. So I had to have another way of fishing. And obviously, something like a Waco rig. It doesn't have to be this. This is just an analog for something more finesse style. A Ned rig, a NACO rig, a wacky rig. But for me, it's going to be the Waco rig. Obviously, the 1-aught EWG with the tungsten nail weight pushed in here, that 1/16 ounce on a spinning combo with the 10-pound braid. But this worked amazingly well. The weather was nasty. The weather was terrible. It was windy. It was blowing my boat all over the place. But I went with finesse fishing, even though that's not what you would think on that type of day, given those types of circumstance. But I read the water, I saw how clear it was, and I realized I could make some casts as long as I kept the wind to my back. So I didn't have that big bow in my line whenever I was fishing that light braid. And, well, it paid off. It only took just a few casts, and I was able to hook into a really nice fish. All right, made a little push out to the middle of the channel just a little bit. Gonna kind of roll with the wind, I'm hoping. There we go, I got him. That's not a bad one. Wow, that's a good fish right there. Yep, they're out in the middle. Come here, dude. Ooh, yeah, come here, you. All right. Oh, and he slung my worm. Dadgummit. That is a not quite 2 pound, pound and 3/4 bass. Pretty close. Boy, that bass is cold, cold, cold. She slung my worm. Beautiful. Look at how he's dark, but you can tell he's not real super green. That bass has lost a lot of has lost a lot of its summer color. They're more out here in the middle like I thought they were. Absolutely gorgeous. Nice little pound and 3/4 bass. Beautiful, lovely. And there he goes. All right, let's go get another one. All right. Cold day, a lot of wind, cloud comfort, but I didn't fish a jerkbait, and I was catching plenty of fish. Now, if you want to work something that's a little bit more noisy, something that's got more thump, something that may have a bit more attractiveness to it, well, obviously, a spinnerbait. I have been talking about these all year, from the springtime all the way around, but especially now, whenever you work a spinnerbait slow, near the bank, paralleling the bank and working it very, very slowly along that structure, by those laydowns, near that flooded brush, along those weed lines, you'd be surprised at just how easy it is to get those bass to come up and munch it. And I worked this the other day, and, you know, it was kind of frustrating in the fact that I was getting some good bites. I was getting some really good bites, and unfortunately, the only thing I caught on this particular spinnerbait that day was just a little 1/2 pound dink, but I hooked into 3 or 4 fish, and I ended up losing them right when I got near the boat. Now, they weren't necessarily big fish. For the most part, they were actually kind of small. The biggest one was maybe in that pound range, but that was information. It did not hurt my feelings to hook into those fish and then lose them at the boat. First of all, they were kind of small. And second of all, it let me know, A, the bass were in that area, and B, they might be a little bit more active than I thought they were. So it allowed me to work a moving bait. Now, I might have to change things up from time to time. And in instances like that, well, I'll go to the spy bait, right? This is that Lucky Craft screw pointer. You know, you guys have seen me start fishing these. I was never a fan of a spy bait, but recently I found out the magic in these. I was able to unlock them, and I can work these hand in hand with a presentation very much like a jerkbait. So I can keep things varied up, and I guarantee you, nobody on my fishery is throwing a spy bait. They just aren't thrown around here. In order to buy one, you have to order them online. Of the dozens of tackle shops here, none of them sell spy baits. They just are not that popular here. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it does give me what I feel is an edge, as I'm throwing a bait nobody else is throwing, and it pairs well with something like a jerkbait. Or I can use it as an intermediary between a jerkbait, a spy bait, and a spinnerbait. So it gives me more options, and all of these are great techniques that you can be using out on the water during the winter time. You know, we get out and we go out in the middle of the winter and the wind is blowing and it doesn't seem like how many layers we have on. We're chattering our teeth. We're freezing our butt off. and we're not catching any fish. And it does not matter how cold it is. Catching fish seems to make you warm, right? You can be freezing yourself to death out there, but if you're catching fish, you just don't want to leave just yet. It's like, okay, well, I'm cold, but I'm gonna stay out here just a little bit longer. So catching fish cures all ills. And the way we need to look at it is we need to look at the jerkbait in the overall picture, how it relates to the conditions. And that goes even into winter. While you may want to start with it as your main bait, as the first bait that you're going to throw with, a lot of times you might actually want to alter that. But at the very least, if you're out there fishing and you're not getting any bites on a jerkbait, don't be afraid to change things up. As they say, read the room, right? See what's going on. And if you're not biting a jerkbait, there's got to be a reason for that. Bass will always bite something. Even on a day that's a grind, I can still eke out a few bites here and there. There are always bass who are going to bite. As we've said, either you're not in the right water or you're not throwing the right presentation. And a lot of times, whenever you're throwing that jerkbait, everybody else is throwing a jerkbait, so you need to change things up. And that's kind of what we want to talk about, change things up with a little swim bait. You guys have seen that I've had a lot of success on throwing these little swim baits because this is small. This is a little nugget. I can reel it very slowly through that water, make it look vulnerable, make it look like a tasty snack, and those bass will absolutely inhale these. I've had a lot of success. As a matter of fact, I'm starting to get away from the jerkbait. I'll try it for a little bit, but I know that I have options, and this is one of those options. Again, something like this caffeine shad, a soft plastic jerkbait. This is another presentation that works so well. Again, it will work in that windy condition as long as you keep the wind at your back, you make those long casts so you don't have a lot of bow in your line and you're still able to work these very, very effectively. I've caught some really nice bass, some 3 and 4 pound plus bass here recently just using a jerkbait. As a matter of fact, most of my better fish this fall and into the winter have been on lures that are not jerkbaits. Spy baits, spinner baits, swim baits, jerk baits, as well as Waco rigs, wacky rigs, all of those sorts of things. I might feel things out with a jerk bait because it's good to cover water with it, but I find myself switching more and more. And again, as the jerkbait kick rages on and all the anglers around you are fishing jerkbaits, it might be better just to have something stashed in your pocket that other guys aren't using. So there you have it. If you find yourself in that jerkbait rut, well then try to break out of it with other presentations. Maybe things that are similar, like a spy bait, or something that's completely different, like a soft plastic jerkbait. But once you start to feel those things out, you're going to find that you're going to have more and more success, and you'll find out better when to apply a jerkbait and when to change to something else. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.